daughter.
Do you understand?
Oh, no, it's going to go for Tuesday.
Yeah, we're gone now. It's 6:30. Thank you very much. So this is the first Finance and General Purposes Committee since the annual Town Council meeting, and as is normal on the agendas for the committees, the first item on the agenda is to elect a chair for the committee. So can I invite nominations please for chair for the committee?
I'd like to put forward Councillor Wiles. I think he did an excellent job last year, and I think he's got the right aptitude and character to chair this meeting, Finance and General Purposes. I believe I've got a second as well for that.
I'm happy to second it.
And before we go to the vote, were there any other nominations? So if I could have a show of hands please, for that nomination. Unanimous. Okay, thank you very much, and I'll hand over to Councillor Wiles.
Thank you, Town Clerk. I was planning to stand down as chair this year, but a couple of people did say they would like me to carry on. So if I have your confidence, then I will accept that and carry on. I think there are some important pieces of work that we have to do in the next year, and not least the Finance and Assets Working Group, bringing all that work to fruition. But generally I think this committee needs to do more in terms of being a place where the detailed discussion takes place before things go to the council, because we have more time to consider things in greater detail rather than regurgitating it and going through the same information at full council meetings. So that would be my ambition, that we do more at this meeting and at this committee in future. Okay. Item 2 is apologies for absence received.
Yes, so Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Ian Black due to illness.
Thank you. 3 declarations of interest. To receive any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest from members in respect of business to be transacted on the agenda. Anything? No. Thank you. Item 4, minutes of the Finance and General Purposes Committee held on the 22nd of April 2024. And to consider any matters arising from those minutes. So, first, any matters arising. The Bulwarks play area, did we put a notice out on that?
The consultation. It's been widely advertised. It's happening tomorrow.
Yeah,
it was postponed for a week due to weather.
Okay. And Councillor Tutor and the Town Clerk put notices out.
Okay.
for that regularly. Yeah, and I'm going to go along to the community van that's going to be pitching up at the quay and be there for some, if not all of the time.
Brilliant. Well done. Thank you.
Page 1 also, we've got an item about the asset officer role being advertised.
Yeah, I have to be honest, I haven't actually done that yet. That's on this tomorrow.
When this was discussed at HR committee, we agreed it should be retitled as the property manager. So, because the person will be a manager managing the caretaking and cleaning team. So it might attract more candidates as well if it's a manager rather than an officer.
Exactly.
Any other matters arising?
No.
Are you happy to approve those minutes?
Approve the minutes. Those.
Have a second?
Second.
All those in favour? Thank you.
Abstain.
Okay, item 5, public participation. A 20-minute session is set aside for members of the public to make representations at the meeting in respect of business on the agenda. Do we have any representations? No, thank you. Item 6 is the risk register. The Town Clerk shares the draft risk register with the committee for consideration and comments. The updated risk register will be recommended to full council for adoption, decision required, and this is attachment 2. Any comments on this?
Sorry, first of all, I'd just like to say I was only going on the ones which were amber ones, but I noticed there was DDC owned buildings where we're unsure of the leases, and STC owned buildings where there was issues over the leases. I was hoping that those would be deferred until we have a property manager to pick up those two items. So although they're in amber, I wouldn't like the town clerk to start looking into those if we're going to recruit somebody within the next month or so, if possible. The one that I did have an issue with was the business continuity, and I was just wondering whether this was being picked up by any of the working groups, and if it wasn't, perhaps we need to set something up to review business continuity, because I think that's very important.
Yeah. So there was a draft business continuity plan Councillor Suka worked on. I haven't had capacity to look at that yet, but I do know that Councillor Mallet yesterday has attended the resilience workshop that was free from the Kent Resilience Forum. So I was hoping that maybe with Councillor Mallet's attendance to that workshop, Councillor Suka and maybe myself could sit down and maybe someone else
quite happy
to work on that and get that.
And just to add in, continuity plan it's a fairly actually with no, or it's a standard product. I've used a lot of collateral from elsewhere, so it should be at least 60-70% close to meeting the needs. So I think it's hopefully just polish up a bit.
Excellent, well, that's excellent. Yeah, well, I'm quite happy. I've done them for two previous organisations I've worked for, so I'm quite happy to assist with that. That's all I had.
I suppose that I had, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was concerned to see that the security is a risk item, and I was just wondering what was happening about that, what kind of surveys and recommendations, and is the caretakers looking into that for you, town clerk? Or because if it was your own home, we would do something about it.
Yeah. So I think since I've written this, to be fair, there has been work done. So I'm not saying that this is an true reflection being amber. We do have a lot of work that's been undertaken in the last couple of weeks. I've got a review of the fire risk assessment happening the first week of June. We've had the PAT testings been undertaken, all the electrical wiring in the buildings being tested. We've had the big oven cooker gas safe signed off. The extraction has been cleaned and so there's a whole list of things that have been undertaken literally in the last few weeks. So I think if I can take that away and have a look at and update it with the actions that have been undertaken and then come back to you. I know that Millie's working currently as well on the alarm system for the what should you call it?
The hub?
The store.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Sorry, I can't remember.
The archives.
Archive store, yes. It does have alarms, but we're looking at maybe we can update things. So if I could take that one away and update everybody for the next committee.
I've got a little update also, just to let you know, I insisted that the staff who are lone working have a corporate mobile phone, so to improve the security of the staff. I was very worried about both Millie and the caretakers being in this building, just one person on their own. So I insisted that mobile phones with pay-as-you-go SIMs, so they're not contractual, were purchased for the staff. So Millie and the caretakers have both got mobile phones for their personal safety.
Yeah, but the requirement for a lone worker policy is one of the risk register items here, so that's probably an action from the policy, so we need to make sure we have that policy.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, we've got the lone working policy in place and we've got lone working risk assessments we've all undertaken as well.
Excellent.
Can I just ask, does that include a sign-out system?
So I've got the book ordered for the front desk because I want to ensure that for the fire risk assessment, obviously, we're meeting, we know who's in the building, because I'm trained fire warden, so it would be my responsibility of the
And
emergency
that would
services.
be enabled by the mobile phone anyway, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Something else?
Sorry, Councillor Shute.
Yeah, so my comments is more from a strategic perspective in terms of a risk register. I mean, it's key as an organisation we do have one, but that we own it rather than it just sitting with the town clerk, because we should be agreeing how we're going to manage this. In previous incarnations, I've had the dubious opportunity to be a risk review manager, running it for an IT organisation. The value of a risk register is only how much credence we give to it. So I wouldn't want to dictate how we do it, but there are a number of ways in which we could, for example, have a deep dive risk review once every quarter within this meeting. We could select certain risks and look at them each week. So there are different ways of doing it, but there's been a significant amount of work done that needs to be captured on here. There's a significant amount of work I think still needed, and all of that should influence the scoring of each risk.
Yeah.
So, and for me, I want to be able to be, us as a group, to be dynamic about the risk and say, actually, we understand what the risk is, we understand how it's been dealt with, and therefore we're happy with the score. Sorry to sort of go through it, but that's really how we should do it. Or else it'll just get put in a drawer.
Yeah, it should
And
I agree with that absolutely, because if you look at organisations that fail, often the reason they fail isn't probably even on their risk register.
yeah,
It was beyond their comprehension.
Yeah.
So we do need to be creatively looking at this as a committee.
Oh, sorry, there was just one last thing I needed to raise that's come to my attention is during a fire the elevator shouldn't be used, and all the organisations I've worked with, they've all had these EvacuSafe, which is a means of device for getting wheelchairs down staircases. I want to raise at this meeting here that I would like to put a proposal forward that we install EvacuSafe equipment and have training for EvacuSafe equipment so that disabled people can be evacuated from the first floor of this building when there's a fire, because you're not allowed to use the lift. So I'd like that recorded.
so there is a risk there, isn't there?
That's a really good
Sometimes a risk.
Yeah, for me, we've got a lot of mitigating actions listed here. And for me, from a project management point of view, we should be progressing each of those mitigating actions on a regular basis.
Yes, I was going to say something related to that. I'm not clear where the review is undertaken of all these risks. And is it this committee? Is it the whole council? Is it the town clerk? I'm just not sure who undertakes the review. And the second point is that there seem to be clusters of dates. Lots in September, lots in June, lots in April. But they don't seem to be spread throughout the year. So they are going to give some body, whether it's this committee or an individual like the town clerk, a lot of work in particular months of the year. And I also want to be reassured, if we agree these dates for review and if we agree on how these items are going to be reviewed, who's going to do it, that we make certain that those dates go into a diary, because otherwise they won't happen. So I would prefer it if we managed to spread those review dates, but I'd also like some clarification as to who is going to undertake that review.
I believe this was one of the areas that we said that the property manager would take responsibility for.
Right, the whole of this risk
The whole of the risk register would come under the property manager, so that would come under his role, and that's why currently it's lodged with the town clerk.
Right.
But as soon as we had a suitable qualified member of staff in, that would be one of the criteria for employing somebody that had risk management experience.
The covering report says this is a living document.
It is.
So I think it should come to every meeting of this committee. I agree. And we do the detailed scrutiny, and then we recommend it to council. So council should have faith in our scrutiny of the document and be prepared to hopefully accept what we're recommending. Councillor.
So the property manager will report to this committee,
I believe that's the
and
best.
we will scrutinise
Yeah.
those reports.
Yes.
And the property manager will put these review dates in his or her diary.
Yeah, that's correct. Yes, that's right. Are you happy with that, Town Clerk?
Yes.
I'd like to expand on that, because I think actually sitting responsibility, this is the typical way in which it ends up in terms of organisational ownership of risk registers, because having done it a number of times, somebody gets given the job as a risk manager, and that person sits in a dark room, and the report comes out, people nod, and then it goes away again.
Exactly.
What I would suggest, maybe something slightly different, is that it's not immediate necessarily, but if we could take a subgroup out of this meeting that had a meeting, not a working group, but had a meeting of people who feel they've got enough experience around risk management, and actually we go through the risk register with the town clerk, take the information that exists around what's being done, and then we can bring it back. So this might be something that's done over 3 months, but a one meeting where you sit down and go through each of the items. I think that's the only way we're going to be able to keep it a living document. But that would be my proposal.
One meeting annually.
No, one meeting. So we need to kickstart this. We can have one meeting, but we don't need to have it in the next month or 2 months. You know, let's put it in the diary. Maybe if we want it to be with the property manager, that's fine. But I think we need to. The risk is we're going to. It's a big document, as typically they are. We're just going to find it too scary to manage it. We need to be able to build in the other stuff, which is what we've done about it, what we still need to do, what the individual dates are for each of those actions. The reason those dates will be on there, I expect, the town clerk, is because they're driven by events within the risks.
Yes.
But on the basis you've already said, there's a number of things already in train.
Yes.
Some of these dates you may have a risk, Claire, that actually doesn't have a review date for 12 months or 18 months because it's being managed. There are ways in which it can be done. But we're starting off, and it's great that we've got one, but we need to do something with it.
So the proposal is we bring this to every meeting, that the property manager has oversight of it at executive level, but that we form a subgroup of this committee to work with the property manager to make sure it is genuinely a living document.
I think, just slightly nuance it, Colin, I think we just agree that we have a meeting, a risk review meeting of a subgroup of this, a meeting where, and that might be 8 weeks from now, where we sit down, subset, and actually go through the risks. Just focus on the risks.
So that's a proposal. Do we have
That'll be my proposal.
seconder? All those in favour?
And I'm not clear what the outcome will be.
You then have a refreshed risk register with the actions, some of which the town clerk has already mentioned have happened, but also the actions that the group, that subgroup, can say need to happen, and that makes the risk, each individual risk far more robust.
Okay.
Yeah, because there may be things on here, Claire, that actually say we could never do this, so we can take them out.
Yes.
From my point of view, we own this risk register,
That's the point.
and until this property manager comes, and by the time he's recruited and is inducted and he gets to grips with this, it might be the best part of 12 months.
Yes.
So we must not shy away from our responsibilities on some of these.
Yeah.
So it should come to each meeting. Do you have a proposal on who should be in that subgroup?
I'm happy to be in that subgroup, and I hope I'm not on my own. I'd like to ask if we have at least 2 others within there, so we have a proper conversation.
Support that.
Anyone else?
I couldn't do daytimes, but if it was early evening, I could come in the evening.
I'd be happy to.
Join forces.
So the proposal is myself, Councillor Shupert, Councillor Green, form a subgroup and come.
We have one meeting in about, should we say, 4 to 6 weeks' time, or at least within an 8-week period, so we then can bring it back to this group in September, and it gives some space for you to think about against those risks, what's happened so
To this committee, okay, and it comes to every meeting.
I'm happy to attend as a learning exercise.
Okay.
Yeah. I
That'll be
think
good.
for me, that's just so in depth and
Yes.
lengthy.
Yeah.
And did we, just a quick question, was it in that entirety something that was already an ongoing document? Did we have a risk register similar to this? Or is it a recent?
I actually constructed this one because it's a format I've used before.
No,
I wouldn't like to comment on.
yeah, no, it's really good because obviously the council does have assets and things, but I would be interested in learning more about it. Really.
I mean, each of these items you could talk for 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
I'm slightly worried about this
Yeah.
meeting. We're going to go through all of it.
That's the point. That's the point, Claire. What happens is you tend to get risk register onto a bigger agenda, and then it sometimes end up being the last item, and then people just nod and say, it's all good, move on. And then what happens is the organisation collapses, and it was on the risk register.
Health and safety.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the proposal. We have a second, don't we? All those in favour? Thank you.
Positive.
That's the way forward.
Yes.
Thank you. Next item is terms of reference review. Following the annual town council meeting, it was agreed that the terms of reference and schedule of delegations for the coming civic year be reviewed by this committee. Comments are invited and the way forward is to be debated. Decision required. So, just the background to this, we agreed terms of reference, which I was involved in writing, where we simplified the committee structure. That was a couple of years ago. And we created this committee, Heritage and Townscape, and that was it at that time. But since then we've added various committees. So the current terms of reference are attached to this report. I think both for this and standing orders, this committee needs to be the place where the detailed discussion of those documents happens.
Definitely.
With the town clerk putting forward the document with any proposed changes as a result of internal consultation. So that's my recommendation. Councillor Wilson.
I do have a general point, which has only recently occurred to me about committees, but in particular chairs of committees. And one thing that worries me is that sometimes you get a situation where a particular individual, assuming that that individual councillor gets elected and re-elected and so on, can be the chair of a committee for a very long time. And I think that's a dangerous position to get into. So what I would like to propose, which I think we should discuss, is that all chairs should serve consecutively a maximum of 3 years. And they can operate for a year or 2 or 3 maximum, and should not stand again for a further period of 3 years. Because I think that would be a way of supporting the principle of democracy, which I'm very keen on, for giving other individual councillors an opportunity to steer a committee in the way that they would like it to go. And I think we need to, I would suggest that we put that, there's no statement about the terms of office of chairs in committees in any of these terms of reference, and I would like such a statement to go into the terms of reference for all the committees. And the reason I've chosen 3 years is because I come from a culture where that that was the prevailing length of time over which anybody could chair a committee for 3 years.
I thought these terms and references were that every year, like we've just done about 20 minutes ago, that a chair's elected.
Yes, but
So that it's
a
only
chair
1
could
year.
stand again
Yes.
and again and be re-elected again and again. And what I'm saying is, anybody, any individual who is a chair can only serve 3 consecutive years,
Right, I see.
and then can only stand again as a chair once a 3-year period has passed.
So even if they're a good chair
Yes.
and they're doing a good job,
Yes. But
you're
then-
saying get rid of them after 3 years
Yes,
because
I am.
of
because
what
an
is that?
individual chair can develop a culture of the committee and can become the go-to person that Sandwich residents go to about a particular issue. And I don't think that is inherently a democratic, pluralistic system. And I support democratic pluralism. And I just think also it gives others an opportunity to steer a committee in the way that they would like to steer it.
I do agree with the democracy, but I think that's your opinion. The other opinion that you
well,
can
you
look
can
at it
argue
from
against it.
is if somebody is a chair because they've got the experience and skills to be a chair, and then they've done a good job at that, and they've got that skills or experience, after 3 years, you'll be handing over the chairship of that committee to somebody who's a complete novice.
Well,
So from
that's
my
the
opinion
thing.
is, if somebody is good at doing what they're doing, get them to continue to do that.
Yes, well, I, as I say, I'm a democratic pluralist, and I also believe
That's why I
that
say
we
that's
are,
your
we
opinion.
all have our separate talents.
I'm a meritocracy, so I believe in
Could I comment? We talked earlier about business interruption, and I do agree with Councillor Upperson that where somebody is the default person, if they were to fall under a number 53 bus or something like that, it can cause a major problem to the council. And I think it's better that knowledge is shared around the council.
And leadership, that's what I'm talking about, and leadership.
Are we going to do that with the town clerk? Another stuff.
Well, it's an
Yeah.
interesting point.
We've got one finance officer, one town clerk.
The sector I come from, there was often a limit on board membership of 7 years, but that was a sector where some chief executives have been there for 25 years, which I think is unhealthy.
I agree that one.
But I think that's a detail about 3 years limit. You know, it's something perhaps we need to discuss more widely in the longer term. But that's the whole point of reviewing these
Yeah.
terms of reference. But,
Yes, so just picking on just this point, because there are other points that will come up, but I certainly have sympathy for what you say. I think 3 years is awkward in terms of the term of the council, because it's a 4-year
Yes,
term.
yes.
You then, for the last year, you then carry forward a requirement for the next council that's incumbent on the individual. So I'm not sure how easily that works, which leads me to your point, Colin, which I think is it would need some talking through. I don't want to vote now and say yes for change without thinking through the ramifications. The standing orders would need to be reflected against it as well. So I would just like to agree from my perspective that it's something that's worth
On the
a
principle.
good conversation about, because in principle democracy is right in terms of allowing people to grow and take leadership
Absolutely.
of aspects. So I wouldn't want to lose
I think
it at all.
my recollection, it's not something that's in the NALC model standing orders or terms of reference, but if you did impose or change to that system, you would have to have a very good succession policy. So it's no good having a chair who
Oh,
suddenly
yes, of course.
disappears with no
Oh,
one who's
absolutely,
prepared
yes,
to take over.
yes.
Well, that's the other issue that you do get in a lot of councils, is that there is nobody that wants to take over that particular issue. So you've got to be, if you say, right, 3 years and that's it, you've had your lot, you've got to make sure, as Councillor Wiles has said, that you've
Yes.
got somebody just as good to take that
Well,
over,
yes.
haven't you? So
Yes,
it's all
absolutely.
very good shutting the gate, but if you're shutting the gate on somebody that's producing the results, where do you go from there?
When
There's
you
only
go to another person who can produce
Yeah.
different kinds of results.
And ultimately, an outcome could be is that the opportunity is made available to another person, because ultimately, if there's a small committee and the person is really keen still to do it after 2 years and nobody else will step up, we shouldn't bar them. So there are ways in which it can be drafted, Claire, that protects the principle as well.
Yes.
I think the other thing for me is it reflects the decision we had the other night about how many committees a councillor can sit on. And we decided not to set a limit, because if the decision is made by all 16 councillors, then surely that's democracy in action. If there's one councillor who's been there 3 years and wants to stand for a 4th year, and the councillors as a body think that person's becoming too powerful, then it's for the councillors to decide
exactly that's
a different
yeah.
decision, a different.
But the committees appoint the chairs. In Untitled Chapter.
Yes, that's
The
true.
committees appoint
Well,
chairs. So
But the council as a whole will be speaking to
yes,
each
but
other.
I mean, I've heard of local authorities where, you know, the same person's chaired the planning committee for 25 years.
Yeah, well, that's
I
an
mean,
exception.
it is totally unacceptable. But these terms of reference don't make it clear how you would get out of that situation.
We've come from something like that, so
Yeah.
what you're proposing is perhaps a bit more the other extreme.
Yeah, well, not the other extreme, but I think we sorry, Jill.
Yeah, no, just to point out, you do review these on an annual basis, so whatever you decide this year, you know, if for example half the council resigned and you had all new council, you know, half the council were new, they could then decide that they're going to change it. So I think as long as you're comfortable with what you agree for this year, and I wouldn't worry too much about, you know, thinking of 4 years ahead, and you know, because it can be reviewed every year. It's not
Yes, I
something.
know,
that's-
but I'm suggesting we review it this year.
Yeah, no, but that's what I'm saying.
No.
But I wouldn't worry too much about thinking about 4 years ahead, because every year it can be it does be, it's
Yes.
part of these standing orders, it's reviewed. So it is
Yeah.
reviewed annually.
Yes, but I'm just saying that I think there should be a principle about the length of chair.
So
chair being.
my proposal on this as a way forward is first to accept that this committee is responsible for these terms of reference, for the detailed scrutiny and debate, and for recommending them to the council. So is a way forward to say each of us goes away, reads this document in detail, and sends the town clerk detailed proposed amendments, if any, and the town clerk can then put that into a single document highlighted in red or track changes or whatever,
So, but
and
you
brings
haven't-
it to the next meeting.
to the next meeting of this committee.
Yeah.
So Claire, if you propose 3 years, then that goes in the document
Yes.
as a proposed change.
Yes.
We can look through the document and pick
Yeah.
out the highlighted proposed.
Yes.
Yeah,
And then
I'm not
debate
saying
them.
3 years is, that's just the culture I come from.
Yeah.
I'm not saying hard and fast, I mean maybe 4,
Okay.
but,
cool.
but I do think that principle does need to be addressed.
I do think that each committee should review their own terms of reference and feedback comments.
sensible.
Yeah.
But we have overriding responsibility
To coordinate and make the final
to submit the
recommendation.
final document. Yeah. So
I second your proposal then.
So I'll amend my proposal to say the town clerk sends these to each committee, asking them to review their own terms of reference and submit them to the town clerk. And we, for the whole document, we as a committee submit any proposed amendments.
So
to
is
the
that
town
how-
clerk.
So what should I do about my proposal then? So what's happening?
Read through this document, and if you have it on Word, just track changes of your proposed amendments and send them to the town clerk.
Okay,
And
and then they'll come back to
Jill can
At the
collate
next
a master
because
document.
Heritage and Townscape won't meet until July.
we might need to be looking at this as a for the
offline,
autumn.
at a distance
Yeah,
review.
maybe
You don't need to do it in
maybe 3 months.
So I think what you're saying, Colin, is you're giving the opportunity for each individual councillor on a committee that they sit to comment on the terms of reference of that committee
Yeah.
by commenting to the town clerk, not through another meeting of another meeting. And that's fine. I have done a review of ours. I did have some specific comments, and I'm happy to feed those through. But I'm just slightly concerned about the breadth and depth of this committee, and also some of the things in it that aren't properly articulated. So, the question that jumps out is how would we do that? So, to oversee effective just one example, but there's many. Oversee effective communications with the public, so that decisions are communicated speedily and effectively by means of the website, social and other media. So how is this committee going to do that when we've got a website that is operating and the town clerk is posting updates on there? So I'm struggling to understand how some of these requirements of this committee will actually intercept the day job we're already doing.
Yeah, it was really if the committee had a particular strategy they wanted, because a lot of this I am using my past experience, and obviously not every council likes the same approach. So it was really to ask the committee if there's a particular strategy you wanted me to focus, or or if there's something particularly you're not happy with that's happening currently and you want it altered.
Yeah.
It was really to sort of maybe get some guidance from the committee. If the committee is saying actually we're happy with how the website's functioning, obviously I know I need to do more regular news items. The Facebook, I think that's really evolving itself now and getting a lot more traction, a lot more visits. But if there was something particularly the committee felt that wasn't going well, or they wanted a different approach, that was really that part of the
Okay, that's right. It's just that Colin's request was to suggest redrafts or inserts, where there's some of the entries in here I'm not really comfortable that this committee can actually manage them. So, for example, I think we should have a strategic plan for the council. We're now into our second year, and we've delivered objectives in the first year. We set out what they're going to be. What we haven't created was a 4-year, now 3-year plan in terms of where the council should end up. I expected to see, us to have done that.
We did have a mission statement and business plan a couple of years ago.
Not within this council.
Previous.
I've seen it.
Yeah, I think that kind of feeds quite nicely into where I am, because I actually went through the terms of reference for this committee and have listed out 30 things that we are supposed to do. So what I would like to suggest is that we develop a template for thoroughness to make sure that we do everything that the council has asked us to do. We put in the current status, so the current status might be that the town clerk is updating Facebook, and then if there is an action, that we're comfortable with that or we're not. And I think that each committee, personally I feel that each committee should review their terms of reference and report against that terms of reference to the council, not just sending in copies of the latest meeting which just kind of cover the hot topics of the moment. But I think we need to be systematic and thorough and comprehensive in the way we go about our business.
I think there's a danger of us just being bogged down in detail.
Well, I think that is really commendable, and I think that the approach is spot on. But I'm not going to comment on that. All I was going to say is top of my priorities, once we've got more policies through the Human Resources Committee, is a forward plan, and from that I would fully expect an action plan each year. So we look at the forward plan that we probably do for 3 years, take us to the end of the term, and each year we pick out the actions. I know we've been doing that with like the play area and the market, Saturday market and things, but I think it'll be good to have a document that we can share on the website. Everybody understands our focus, what we're trying to achieve this year, and we can all pull in the same direction.
That's just picking out another one of the 30 to make provision for agreed capital projects. You know, so that all of these things, and it is the devil is in the detail, but as a committee, we should be looking at the detail, surely.
So this committee, the number one item of its duties on these terms of reference is to oversee the council's internal management and administration. So for me, this is where this document should come before it's recommended to council.
Absolutely.
But I think there should be a bias towards simplification of this document, certainly for this committee, because it is definitely quite long.
Well, I think you've suggested that, Chair, haven't you? That this is what we're going to do. So you've suggested that we're all going to go off. We're all going to read it. We've heard some very good, options tonight that can be fed into it, and then I think that ought to all come back via the town clerk so that it can be reviewed suitably at a given date, a given time, not too far off, but to allow enough time for it. And I think what we should be doing is looking towards the councillors taking more ownership. So the town clerk is literally just administrating it.
Yeah. So my proposal is that each committee over the next cycle looks at its own terms of reference and makes proposed changes, which goes into a master document that the town clerk puts together, and that this committee does the same, but we look at the overall document for recommendations of council.
If I'm concerned about the point that I'm making, because I'm concerned that it's going to get lost. As I said at the start, I would like the principle of rotating chairs for however length of time we decide to be applicable to all the committees. And what you're saying at the moment is that each committee should scrutinise their own terms of reference and come up with their own recommendations. So that is a contradictory perspective. So I'm not clear what's going to happen.
So I think that's a good point, because within these terms of reference there are various sections. So the role of the committee, the membership, and then the specific duties, responsibilities of the council.
Nothing is said about the chair.
So I think the council as a whole needs to make sure that they're all basically doing the same thing, and that each committee can't decide, we'll have 12 members or we'll have 4 members, or so we have to. I think we have to make
our chair.
I thought that was a given.
Yeah.
I thought that obviously it's got to be generic across all the committees.
Yeah.
Is that not a given? I thought that was what we were doing. So, for instance, your option that you're asking to be taken up, that would be, from my understanding, that would be across all the committees.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
But if you're saying each committee should scrutinise and make recommendations about their own terms of reference, that contradicts that general.
Well, the point is that each committee looks at its own terms of reference. It goes into a master document and then comes here. And we, as a Finance and General Purposes Committee, which is responsible for overall administration, if their proposal is ridiculous or not congruent with all the other committees, then we make a decision.
And we can make a decision about rotating chairs.
I think we should.
Yeah,
But it needs to be consistent across all committees.
Yes,
We can't just have one committee doing it.
No.
So can I suggest we don't make it into a never-ending machinery of government in terms of its council? Why don't we keep it, which is what I thought I heard from you at the start, Colin, which was to give an opportunity for all members of other committees to comment on their terms of reference, but let's not do it in a way that means they have to meet first, as Claire said. H&T 2 months away. We will be 6 months through before we've agreed a set of terms of reference. That doesn't make sense to me.
No.
Opportunity to comment, this committee decides the outcome at the next meeting. So you give a less than 2, up to 2 weeks. So it's tight. So people have got an opportunity. You can say at least they have an opportunity to comment.
Without going to a meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, but I'm happy with that. And all those comments are fed back to the town clerk, and then they come to this
Yeah.
next meeting.
And what would be even helpful is if somebody's willing, and I don't think I've got capacity, but somebody says actually I'll do a template, a table, a template that can be used to facilitate this, so that all that the town clerk needs to do is just drop each of the templates into the next page of that document.
Okay, so that will come to the next meeting, which is in 2 months. This committee.
This committee is every monthly. Every month.
So it's every month, yeah.
Yeah.
So
June.
will that fit into that timetable?
I can make it fit.
So that's a proposal. We have a second of it.
I'll second that.
All those in favour? That's
Can I also ask, Chair, though, did we, and via the town clerk, are we sort of being asked just to recommend that we approve the current terms of reference, or are we in no man's land and we haven't got any terms of reference until we do?
So council adopted these with the caveat that they were going to be reviewed, and it was asked that they come to the Finance and General Affairs Committee.
Right.
So that's what you're doing.
great.
And then once you've agreed them, then they will be recommended to council.
So these are accepted,
Yeah, at the moment.
adopted at the
Yes.
moment? Okay, that's fine.
These were adopted in December.
Does anybody have capacity to issue something tomorrow? Because it would be ideally when tomorrow for people to then respond within the time limit that you've set.
Yes.
Because if not, we'll just, if it
No,
goes
I'll do
onto
it
your
in the morning.
pile, are you sure?
Yeah, I'll do them.
Okay. So that's finishing as item. Any other comments on this? You happy to progress as we've agreed? So the next item is 8, proposal for short video on to support tourism. Members to consider a report from Councillor Black that outlines the proposal for consideration. Decision required, attachment 4.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to try and get this right because I didn't want to have what we had in the full council meeting the other day, because I do hate ambiguity. And I've got 2 things here. So I've got Councillor Black's report says it may be £900, but it might be £700. Then I've got the actual Welcome to Sandwich video proposal, which doesn't mention anywhere £700.
No.
So there's that ambiguity there. It says about currently Sandwich markets itself on a small number of websites, advertisements and leaflets and word of mouth, where it says under opportunity, but that's incorrect because it doesn't market itself just on those items. It markets itself on social media and many other options, so that's an incorrect saying. Also, it says about bringing in the promotional video, attract more visitors to the town, increase footfall, and bring in much needed revenue, but that won't be revenue to the council, will it? So we've got to take that into consideration about who it's going to be of benefit to. And also there's an ambiguity over these QR codes. It mentions QR codes. Now, are the QR codes going to be actually in the video while you're watching it? Because I've used QR codes on numerous occasions, and you need to have the QR code static or stationary when you're using your phone or smart device to lock onto it. It says also here potential benefits: increased footfall will result in increased revenue for the towns and local businesses. I think that ought to be altered to shops and businesses. And this item here is just so totally incorrect, it needs to be ripped out. It says existing competition, none. There are no other videos of specifically welcoming visitors to Sandwich or linking to QR codes. Well, I agree with the QR code bit, but earlier today, whilst eating my cheese sandwiches, I went on for half an hour and I found nine welcoming you to sandwich videos. And okay, I think it's the White Cliffs Country Partnership one is dated, but the White Cliffs Country Partnership one does have all the items that is being put over in this document. So it does have drone footage, does have the golf club, and it does have all those. So all I'm trying to say is, one, can we sort out the ambiguities, and two, can we determine the benefits? So if this council were to offer finance towards this project, we need to know the end benefits. Nobody would buy anything if they didn't think it was going to benefit them. So we need to know those benefits. So I'll shut up now and let somebody else speak.
So I can make some commentary around this. So this was presented at the Tourism Forum when it last met, and the paper covers much of it, and I think, Paul, some of the points you pick up are quite right. But picking up on a couple of questions, the cost, the presentation or the presenter said that the total cost is estimated at 900, but there is an opportunity to reduce that cost. Not offering it at 700, but there's a possibility it may come in at a lower amount. So 900 is seen as a maximum, and there may be opportunity to get it less than that.
Can we have it less than that then?
Well,
that's what I'm saying. When people say there's an opportunity, well, can we have that opportunity then?
if it gets realised,
I can share with the committee that there is a meeting planned where I'm hoping that that opportunity will be closed, agreed. So I don't want to go into details, obviously, before the meeting's happened, but a meeting is scheduled.
Okay, thank you.
And then I think on some of the, I agree with you about videos are out there. I've looked at them before. This was done. I looked as well, and they are quite old. But for me, the issue is about, it doesn't matter how good a quality video it is, it's how you actually get it out there and get it accessed by people. That's the only benefit it will have, is if people actually want to look at it. So I wasn't personally 100% convinced about the rationale for it. However, the cost is low. We don't have a current video up to date that presents sandwiches in a way that is positive, that could generate visitors. Equally, if we were to contribute, if it was hosted on our website, then at least when anybody visits the town council website, they will see the video that isn't a flavour of sandwich. So there are some obvious benefits, at least in terms of where it might be hosted and where it can be seen, but how we measure its actual ultimate success is difficult in any case, I think. Also, there are opportunities. The resident who presented, who said that there are opportunities maybe for funding from elsewhere in any case. So it wasn't about the town council paying for it in totality, but the agreement was to bring it to this meeting to have a conversation about it.
I think, I hadn't seen this until this committee agenda appeared. I think as a general rule, I would like more informative reports coming to committees and council. It's not clear who this proposal is from, what the name of the company is. Do we know what their work is like, what their reputation is? Do we have examples of their work? So it's all a bit vague to me.
You have got all the names at the end.
Yeah, I have.
The video, the photographer,
Yes,
the
but
project
I have
manager.
no idea who those people are. And then the recommendation is we're asked to consider the merits. Well, we can't really do that because I think on the one hand the Tourism Forum clearly is a new body and we need to support them and push them to deliver. then it says should STC contribute towards the cost. So the total cost is £900, could be 700. Are they asking for the full amount or a proportion of that? It's not clear. And who, if not, who will make up the balance? So yeah, it's a.
From my point of view, you're kind of going in the direction of my thinking there, Colin, in terms of who is the client here, and if we're the client, what are we asking for? What's our user requirements? What's our specification? What's our editorial rights? Are we just going to end up being given something and said, oh well, there it is, give us the £900 please, when we've not had editorial rights to make sure that what is actually delivered is something that we want.
Exactly.
I've got a big problem with it.
It's not clear who will own the video,
Yeah.
who owns the copyright,
Yeah.
etc.
I just wanted to, sorry if I can come back, Chair. It's just with all of these, you know, it would be nice, instead of what's happened over the past 17 years of my experience, is people just coming to the council or Tollbridge Fund and saying, I've got this great idea for sandwich, can you give me the money? I would like to see providers or potential grant requesters coming to the council and saying, actually a bit like Sir Roger Mammoth School did, saying, well, the kids in the school raised £2,000, would you give us another £4,000? That's what I would like to see. I would like to see people that, if it's such a good idea, they're either putting their own money up or somebody else's money up and saying, but would you match fund it? And in that case, from my point of view, I would be a lot more sympathetic towards the request. But the last thing I just wanted to say, Chair, was I'm also a little bit worried that this might set precedent, because are we looking at this, how are we looking at this? Because if this is a request for a grant of funding, is this a request to STC Council, or is it to the Tollbridge Fund? And if such, then why isn't it a grant request like everybody else requests funding? So that's what I'm asking, because that's another ambiguity, because otherwise, for instance, one of the events, just say, Salute the 40s, could say, oh well, I won't apply to the Tollbridge Fund, I'll just apply to STC, just say I've got a great idea to put forward, I'll just apply to STC to get the money. So I think we need to be careful what we do with this. Are we opening up a new channel for people requesting funding?
I think the other point is that any report coming to a committee asking for funding, it needs to identify if there's a budget for that money, or if not, where the money might come from, which this report doesn't do. I mean, the Tourism Forum was set up by STC, so it's our body, and presumably the video will be owned by the council.
Well, I think that would be determined on how much of the cost you're willing to support or not. I think, you know, if it was a proportion, then I'm not sure how that would, but that's obviously something we need to clarify.
So do we have a proposal?
My proposal would be that it's deferred back to Councillor Black, because he's representing the Tourism Forum, because he was the secretariat for that meeting and agreed to bring it to this for discussion. So I'd suggest there's a lot of feedback here for him to determine whether it should be resubmitted for the next meeting with answers to the questions raised.
And can I add to that, because at the Tourism Forum, the discussion, people asked whether a video had much impact, and it seems to me that the Tourism Forum has to decide on its priorities and what it thinks will promote tourism. And what I understood to be happening was a pitch from the people who want to do this.
Exactly.
Although it was a generous pitch, I mean they said, you know, we're doing it for less than we would normally. I mean, I think they suggested they would do it for cost rather than profit. But it's not clear to me that the Tourism Forum would give a video a top priority. That there might well be other things that the Tourism Forum would suggest, which would also entail some expenditure, which may have higher priority.
So I think that discussion needs to happen at the Tourism Forum, because I mean, I worked in social housing for many years, and there was always a debate about how do we raise the profile of social housing. You know, do we have conferences or blah blah blah, and it came down to if you can get a housing storyline in a soap opera, it probably does more for promoting social housing than thousands and thousands of pounds of spending elsewhere. So is a video the best way to promote Sandwich, or getting it on primetime TV, or you know, something else? So you need some brainstorming about that.
And just to support what you're saying, Chair, if you don't mind me saying, I did mention this before, I don't know if it's at the Tourism Forum or full council, so this is £900 and you've got an unknown quantity of audience, haven't you? So you could put this video out there, 10 people could look at it, or 10,000 people could look at it.
Yep.
Now what I'm saying to bring us into the 22nd century is nowadays they have all these organisations. I know this via my daughter's, what she works in for the newspapers. The newspapers pay social influencers. Now, if you've got a social influencer on your smartphone, if you look up that social influencer, it will say how many followers they have. So they might have 200,000 followers. So if you ask a social influencer to come to Sandwich and you take them around the town and you buy them lunch, and they put something on their blog, that is the possibility is that will be seen by 200,000 people. So what I'm saying is I'm backing up what you're saying. Who's going to look at the video? It's an unknown quantity. If you have one social influencer come here who's got 200,000 followers, there is a possibility that 200,000 people are going to look at something that social influencer says. And I'm not saying that whether it's the right way of going ahead, but apparently lots of people believe in people like a Kardashian person, and so if the Kardashians wear a certain type of footwear, everybody wears that footwear. So,
One of them was a river runner.
So anyway,
But to quote a recent example, the Walker's crisp thing probably did more for Sandwich than any other promotional
exactly.
material.
And I was just going to say
So I'd like to speak in to kind of say that I really support the idea of this. I think perhaps I do understand the debates about the the report and whether it's adequate, but just having daughters and knowing how they just look things up constantly, and that becomes your own habit, that you instantly look for something on YouTube or Google by the name, say Sandwich, and that is going to come up automatically. It's not the idea of getting it into people's orbits. It's the fact that if people are looking at something and they're looking to go somewhere, as people often do, they do it. It's like this TikTok thing. It's very quick. It's not, they look for something that is eye-catching, that's video, that's a video is something that's more interesting than reading text. I just think it's a really good idea, because I don't think it has to be proven that it would be, people would look for it and find it. I think it would come up on searches.
The problem with Sandwich is that if you think there's 8 billion people in the world, probably nearly 8 billion people think of the word sandwich meaning a sandwich.
That's right.
And the remainder think of sandwich in Kent.
But it's more about people deciding, that they would go somewhere by having a look and think, would they bother? Do you see what I mean? By having a visual representation of that place could be a deciding factor of, oh yeah, okay, that looks okay. But if somebody mentions it to someone and they look, then if there isn't something that is kind of appealing, they might just slide off their radar?
I did look at the White Cliffs Country video, 6 years old, 12,000 views on YouTube.
In 6 years.
In 6 years.
12,000,
Rubbish.
2,000 a year.
But take it back to the fact that you're getting a video proposal of £900. That's, you know, it's not a significant cost.
So can we propose that we support this in principle, but that we have a number of questions?
More exploration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the tourism forum to answer. Would that be okay?
Yes, one of my questions would be about these QR codes, because I don't really understand what they're saying about it.
No.
I have just been visiting little towns rather like this in France, and in each of those towns there were QR codes attached to every interesting looking building. And if that's what they have in mind, I mean, that strikes me as probably rather cheap technology, I don't know. It feels cheap but very accessible. If that's what they have in mind, I would be keen on it, but I just don't understand what that is.
No, it's ambiguous, isn't it?
So that was proposal.
So I propose that we support this in principle, but ask various questions, which hopefully the town clerk has made a
Yes.
comprehensive list of. Those in favour?
And also, sorry, just to add to that, and also to have examples of what they've produced.
Yeah.
Because that's
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
talking about something that we have
Yeah.
no
Could we see,
idea.
Exactly.
they might be
Yeah.
fantastic, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay, all those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Next item is nine, working group for finance and assets, to consider the work undertaken to date by the finance and assets working group and to debate the membership and terms of reference for the civic year 24/5 decisions required. Councillor Shuker, do you want to lead?
Yeah, I was just going to just give some context in terms of what's been achieved or what progress has been made. So the working group has met on 5 occasions over the period of 6 months, and there have also been subgroup and individual activities that have taken place in that period. But a number of factors have actually hampered the ability to make great progress in the working group. So, firstly, the absence of key documents for a number of the assets under review. The search for missing documents has consumed time and effort, and we still have gaps across a number of areas of the documentation. The significant delay in recruiting an asset officer, now property manager. That's impacted the ability, because this, you know, for all intents and purposes, a group of councillors fitting this in on a voluntary basis, it hasn't been that constant resource looking at this as an issue. This subgroup itself, or looking at the assets which Colin's been part of and Nick and myself, has been impacted by a number of things like holidays, sickness. We seem to roll along with reasons why it's not met as much as it might have done, but that has been another factor. But lastly and most importantly, there's been, I think, an underestimation of the task itself. So when I went back to look at the terms of reference that we created for the working group, it really dawned on me that actually each of the work streams within the terms of reference themselves could easily stand alone with 6 months worth of effort as a working group. So I think we set the parameters far too wide in terms of what we wanted to achieve in what is now proven to be too short a period. So I think moving forward, I think it's a working group. Is it a standing working group? Because I think actually looking at the assets and the whole things around it, things like cost codes were mentioned. There are a number of other things, a number of other opportunities from the assets for the future. Even talking about the rates of income from assets, etc., etc., etc. That could easily run for the next couple of years as an effort. because there's no way we'll get to end of all the things that are on that terms of reference, and it's whether we as a group recognise the importance of getting the assets right, but recognising we have to be realistic about timescales, and that if we therefore are supportive of that, that we then agree that a working group in some shape or form continues. So that's the context.
Also, I recognise this group has done some really sterling work and really hard work, and the thing that I'm worried about is I don't want more pressure or hard work, particularly on what Councillor Tuchel has just said now, that something could run for the next 2 years. I wouldn't want that small group of professionals to feel that they're obligated to another 2 years of very hard work. So I'd just like to say, I mean, I'm really happy with this group and the outcome from this group. I think there's been some fantastic work done, but I would like to see it reviewed about the membership of the group, and if those that have put in a lot of hard work up to now are still happy to continue, or with great merit, that they're able to step off at this time. And this isn't personal to anybody, but there may be some people that are particularly elderly or particularly infirm who don't want to continue. I just think they ought to have that opportunity.
So the current membership is 1, 2, 3,
Danielle,
4 plus
me.
Councillor Gray.
yes.
Are any other members willing to join? Because we can have up to no, we can have a maximum of 5.
Yeah, we've got
So we have 5 currently. So do any of the current members wish to step down? I'm happy to continue.
Councillor Gray at all.
The last time I did speak to Nick, he was willing to continue.
He was,
yes,
wasn't he?
yeah. He brings a lot to the table in terms of what we want to do. But I think it's the right offer to make, Paul, and a generous offer, because I'm not doing is trying to say us 5 have now got a 2-year job. What I'm saying is we just move to the next phase. The arrival of a property manager will make a difference, and hopefully that might then mean a lot can be handed across. The template that Danielle and Peter's created, excellent. That can be used and will be modified, I assume, in the future as things move on. But what's the stumbling block at the moment is the ability to actually drop in all the information, because we haven't got all the information. But I myself am going to populate some of the spreadsheets over the next 3 weeks. So what we've got will go in there, but there are some significant gaps. But then in that terms of reference, there's a whole load of other things which are probably more exciting for the future. Is about what are the opportunities around the assets we've got? What do we need to do in terms of looking at a maintenance schedule? All those things in terms of actually doing something with the information we're building.
The comments you made earlier about underestimation are absolutely spot on, because it's a huge task. I think we have 19 different assets, and we've identified an asset data sheet with, I don't know, about 40 fields, data fields that need populating. So you're talking about, the thick part of about 800 data fields, and whether those data fields are a maintenance plan. The maintenance plan then is a document in its own right. So we've actually got that to the stage where I haven't published it, we've agreed all of the fields, but we've got to the stage where I wanted it was in my line of thinking that the property manager should now be the one to take that on and edit it, as opposed to replicate it 19 times, because he may want to, or she may want, that person may want to add different fields or field some of the fields. So it's a full-time job. It is a full-time job. And then in terms of the financial reporting and codes, we've been waiting for this new business system to be put in, and we do need, as a council, I believe, to audit that and make sure that it's been set up and we know the codes and everything. So there's a whole stream of work that needs doing there, as well as simplifying the way we spend money. So it's a big job. It's an enjoyable job in some respects, to be quite honest, but there is a lot of work to it.
So yeah, two things from my perspective. One is that the assets work that we're doing, I think by the time the property manager is appointed, we will have the skeleton of a database, if you like, for he or her to take on.
Yeah.
But I have to say that the absence of some information is an absolute scandal.
Yeah.
In terms of what past administrations have been doing. For example, today I got a copy of the cinema lease dating from 1990, and it's quite clear that the rent has never been reviewed in that whole time, even though there's clauses in the lease for rent reviews on a regular basis. So I don't know what, we're clearing up this
Regularly
mess
every
in the
35
state.
years.
Yes,
And it's all been thrown on our shoulders. It's a disgrace, really.
Yeah.
But I think on the finance stream, which Councillor Carter and Councillor Breen are working on, I think that's a really critical area as well, because we need to look at the complexity of this current structure and trying to simplify that as much as we can. And I know that the working group does have the ability to co-opt up to 3 members, I think it is, up to 4 non-councillors. So I think it might well be worth us looking to see if there's anyone with particular financial expertise out there, or property expertise, or both, who could join the 2 working groups.
I agree.
So,
Spread the load.
are there any members of the committee who are not currently members of the working group who are desperately keen to join the working group? Or can we say that we're happy for it to continue?
I propose that if they're happy with the workload, that they continue, and we give them a vote of thanks for what they've done today. Is what I would like to propose.
Do you have a second?
Yes, I suppose.
All those in favour?
Basically.
So we'll carry on as we are. I mean, are you happy with these terms of reference as they stand?
I think so, but it's just about being realistic. And
We're not proposing any changes to that, so, but we're just accepting that it's a longer process than was first envisaged.
Yeah. And we might come back to the point in 3 months or maybe 6 months where it's actually the working group has gone where it wants to in terms of that phase, and then it becomes another phase for another group.
Okay. So, you happy with that? So, moving on to item 10. Confidential matters. Under the Public Bodies Admission to Meetings Act 1960, extended by Section 100 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public may be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempted information as defined in Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 by virtue of the paragraph specified against the item. Information of a commercially sensitive nature, decision required. And this is Bay Hall, the Town Clerk to share a report that details progress to date with estate agent appraisals and inquiries.
Propose going into confidential.
Do we have a second, ladies?
I'll second it.
All those in favour? Unanimous. Councillor Breen.
Going into confidential.
Yeah.
Happy to do so.
Thank you.
Go around it. Thank you.
Thank you.